Speaking Human.
Today on Speaking Human, we decode the meaning behind a handful of slang terms making the rounds currently in pop culture and social media.
Speaking Human.
Welcome to Speaking Human, where we simplify the world of marketing for humans. I'm Shad Conley, and with me is my co-host, Patrick Jebber.
What's up, Bay?
I don't even know how to respond to that exactly.
Bay is a term of endearment. It means before anyone else. You come before anyone else, Shad, in my book. It doesn't always have to be a significant other, right? It could be your significant co-host other. Right? No?
That's an outdated term. Nobody's even using that anymore.
I don't know how it works. I'm not a millennial. What do you want from me? I'm not the next generation.
I thought you were calling me Beyonce.
What's up, Beyonce? I don't even know what that means.
Just to, preface this show, we're going to be saying a lot of words that we shouldn't be saying today. A lot of terms that you shouldn't hear coming out of our mouths that sound unnatural, like you saying bae.
I just wanted to get people turned for this party. I wanted people to be like, whoa, I'm getting the knowledge dropped on me from all these slang terms. Now I know what this means. And let them absorb all this slang knowledge that we've acquired over the last, few weeks.
And everybody's going to be like, it doesn't sound right. What he's saying doesn't sound right.
I feel like he's really forcing all these terms into this podcast episode. None of this makes sense.
A verbal crowbar, and he's just jamming them in for no reason.
And he's not saying them right.
One after the other.
And you would be correct.
And that's kind of a sign you know you're old or your generation has passed. When you start trying to use this new lingo, it sounds weird. As soon as it comes out of your mouth, you're like, why doesn't it sound right when I say it? It sounds right when everybody else says it. How come it doesn't sound right when I say it? Or when you read things on social media out loud and you're like, what is this? You have to keep reading it over and over to try to make sense of it. And you're like, I think they spelled this wrong.
And that happens a lot. Each generation has slang terms that they use. I mean, we had some that our parents didn't use and so on and so on. And it just keeps going. And you start to understand as you get older, mentality of like, kids these days, they just don't use English.
It's like they're speaking another language.
What are these kids saying nowadays? I don't even know.
It is funny, though, that it gets made into such a generational thing, and I almost don't even think that's completely true. A lot of this slang, it starts off like regional, and then kind of gets spread around through like music or writing or movies and stuff like that. But I think it sounds weird and foreign to a lot of people at first, even young people, until it becomes normalized. I think the young are just kind of more open to it and accepting of it and willing to use it, as opposed to the older are like, no, I'm not saying that. Young people are more open to using it, but I think it sounds weird to them. I remember being young and hearing words and being like, what is this? What does this mean? And like saying it as a joke at first until you use it enough that it becomes normal. It's still weird at first, and it's still not normal when you first hear it. It takes a while for these things to become something you understand.
Yeah, and the reality is a lot of the slang terms come from other terms or phrases or language, and you go, oh, that's based off of this. And then suddenly a kid goes, well, then that's not cool. They only like it when they think they created it.
Yeah, that's why a lot of these things have such a, short shelf life. But I even think about stuff from when we were younger, and I was thinking about like a lot of these hip-hop terms in the 90s until I heard them in like songs or on TV, stuff like fat and fly and crunk and crib. It all had to start somewhere. And think about like the movie Clueless that made up like this whole other language. Maybe there was somewhere where people actually talk like that, but I didn't know those people. Did you know those people?
Not really.
Yeah. After it came out, people started using some of that stuff, but...
Well, that's the thing. Usually there's some event or some movie or some pop culture phenomenon that makes something popular. Clueless is an example, sometimes it's more of jokingly at first, but then it catches on and people start using it more frequently, and then it's in the common vernacular.
Yeah. And there's a lot of that where it starts off jokey at first and then the joke becomes the reality, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's cray, right?
It's just weird the way these things happen. You're just like using it maybe ironically and then you're not.
Yeah.
So there was a news story recently that's gone viral about this 40-something Massachusetts teacher who was secretly keeping a dictionary of slang terms his students were saying. So we'll do a little quiz here to see if you know or recognize any of these terms. You can tell me if you know any of these. Have you heard these? Sus. Do you know sus?
When I was doing some research for the podcast and I came across that, it is when someone is acting suspicious or shady. Am I right?
Yeah.
Suspicious. You just completely chopped off the end of that word.
Yeah, it's a long one, you know? Good example I found of that one on Twitter was, anyone that owns a cargo van is sus to me.
Oh, that's a good one. I like that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sus.
Yeah. How about high key, low key?
Yeah, this is a weird one to me. Is this used a lot?
I guess I've heard low key used before. I've never really heard high key used before. So it's more like high key is like out in the open, and low key is more like secretive, you know?
Okay.
I'm high key eating vegetables, but I'm low key wanting cake.
Oh, yeah. That's an interesting one.
One goes with the other. So I haven't really seen that much, but
Are those always used together?
I don't think so, because I think I've seen low key like by itself.
Okay.
This guy's low key awesome or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Meaning like somebody's like secretly awesome, or I think somebody's secretly awesome.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, that was kind of interesting. And so then the last one here is smacks.
Like Honey Smacks? Wasn't that the frog?
Yeah, everybody remembers that frog.
Yeah, he's like ribbit.
Yeah, it's supposed to mean something that's really like good or delicious, like this burrito smacks, I think, because I've never really seen this one either.
Oh, okay. The other definition that I saw out there, a suggestion, that smacks of something, like that smacks of sarcasm.
Which that's kind of like an older usage, I think.
Well, there you go. That's why it makes more sense to me that way, right?
It's tough to keep track of all these things, but now there's 3 new terms we can all start using and, just kill for everybody else.
So does smacks then originate from Honey Smacks? So like if it's got good taste or flavor, like, man, that smacks.
I don't know, but you mentioned Honey Smacks, and that was immediately when I see that word, that's the first thing I think of, and I just picture that frog.
Isn't that weird?
Doesn't he like wear a hat?
Yeah, he's like a cool frog he's got tennis shoes and stuff.
That's just our 80s brand ingrained minds.
Yeah, that's what they did to us back then.
That's what they did to us.
They educated us in the ways of branding. So why do companies and brands need to be aware of slang terms and phrases and what they mean? What do you think? Why do they need to be down with the lingo?
Down with the lingo. There's a pretty simple answer to that, and that is you want to understand what people are saying. If your customers are saying you're sus or your product smacks, you want to know what that means, right? If you're reading that kind of stuff on social media and you're sitting there going, what the hell does that mean? And you can't really address that if you don't understand what people are talking about. On the most basic level, you just want to understand what the customer is saying.
Being able to communicate is critical to any brand. If people you're communicating with are speaking another language, even if it's not your primary customer, you still want to be aware of it. You should be able to at least identify with it because it could be detrimental to doing business. If you're saying the wrong words or saying something that doesn't make any sense in another language or you can't understand them, that's the worst part. You know what I mean? It's the same principle, in my opinion, as any other language barrier, right?
Yeah, you need to be able to communicate. One, you want to know what they're saying and you want to be able to speak back to them in a way they understand. Though you need to obviously be very careful when you're using slang with how you're using it. And obviously you want to use it kind of sparingly and not do what we've done on this podcast even so far and kind of throw it in over the top and We'll play you another clip that's a really good example of that in a pretty funny way later in the show here. But yeah, you just don't want to lay it on too thick, but you do want to be able to meet them in the middle and kind of speak that language a little bit and be able to use that and have that common grounds of communicating. Another thing is you want to understand so that you can communicate in a way where you're not using things in a way that's offensive, or you're using words in the wrong way, or you don't understand what you're saying. You're using a term because you don't understand that it has multiple meanings, and maybe you're throwing it out there in a way where people misinterpret what you're saying because you didn't realize you were saying something that means something else. You didn't realize that smacks, is a treat when you're talking about, slapping people in the face or something else. Or whatever you're trying to talk about, but in this age of slang, things can have a lot of meanings and significance that you may not totally pick up on if you don't know all these different definitions that words can have.
Yeah, it's a big world and it's hard. You just can't avoid it. At some point, you have to be able to at least be conscious of it and also sensitive to the fact that what you grew up with isn't necessarily what is today. So the same words, slang terms, all that stuff changes. It evolves over time. So you got to be okay with learning it, or at least having someone on your team who is familiar enough with it that they can school you in the appropriate usage or what they're saying.
Yeah, and I think that's a key part, is having the right people, who can understand and interpret and help you communicate in that way.
Yeah. So there's the obvious saying of the danger of miscommunicating, but I think there's also this level of losing touch, because brands can obviously lose touch with a younger audience. And whether or not your main target audience or your main customer is a younger generation or demographic, eventually they will be, right? They will be your customer at some point. Eventually they're going to grow up. And if you've alienated them for the last 10, 15 years, now they're adults now, and they're like, I remember when they were using these slang terms inappropriately, or they never connected with me when I was younger. Now you've lost them as a customer, right? As an adult. And that could be detrimental to you long term. You know what I mean?
That's a good point. That young generation doesn't stay young forever, just like the old generation isn't going to last forever. They're all going to evolve into something else. So if your brand wants to stick around, you always need to be thinking forward in that way.
Those are good. We're just giving you a little taste of things to think about so that, you don't seem so sus.
Definitely don't want to be sus. I have a feeling we're going to be using that one all the time. So easy.
Yes.
I don't even understand how to say that one. So I'm going to steer clear of that altogether. Yes. I did it. I went against my own advice and I did it, and I immediately regret it. In a minute, we'll define some of the key slang terms you may be scratching your head over on Facebook, Twitter, and even just reading some headlines these days. But first, let's get a quick word from our sponsor.
Today's sponsor is Farmers Insurance. Insurance can be confusing, overwhelming, and time-consuming. At Hire Insurance Agency, we remove the guesswork and hassle, helping you protect what matters most. We offer a wide range of auto, home, business, and life insurance policies to help you meet your specific needs. Call 844-543-3463 or visit hireinsurance.com. That's HYRE insurance.com for more information.
Good morning, TPS students. It is testing week and it's time to slay all day.
Yeet! Stay woke, be on fleek, and get that Gucci breakfast.
Goals. Say bye, Felicia, to that testing stress. Weather's gonna be turned, right, Chris?
Yes! Toledo weather gonna be V-lit during testing week. A hundo P chance of success. You've got this, kids. Steve, how about that traffic? Are we looking
Better than we're talking turn. FOMO won't be an issue. No traffic problems around any TPS schools to keep you from taking those tests.
That was a clip from a local news station out of Toledo, Ohio that went viral recently for its comical overuse of slang while attempting to speak to a younger audience. While it's good for brands to understand the lingo being used on social, that soundbite is a great reminder of how off-putting it can be when the language is used inauthentically. Just something to keep in mind as we dive into our social slang definitions here on this episode. Right now, we're going to dive into some good ones. Shad, let's hit them with the slang.
Yep, we've got an octet. We've got 8 slang words you may have seen, may have confounded you, or maybe you already know them. We'll see. We'll go through. This is a good test for how much slang you know on social these days. We'll start it off. We'll go back and forth here. I'll kick it off with the first one, which is thick. Now, this is the term that basically inspired this episode. It was included in an article on Speaking Human that someone younger than us wrote, and in editing it and reading it, it made both of us pause and say, wait a second, is this a typo? This is thick, T-H-I-C-C. I'm looking at this and I'm going, this is wrong. It should be T-H-I-C-K, right?
Yeah, when I saw it, I thought to myself, the first time I thought, oh, that must be a misspelling. I'll go back and fix that. And then when I saw it for the second time, I thought, there's no way that the spell check didn't catch both of these. So I realized I had asked the question to the original author, and I said, what's up? What does that mean? And I was surprised to find out some very popular slang term that I had no idea about. And so then we started talking about it, right? And then that led to the idea for this episode.
Yeah, it's a thing, and it's a thing I had, up until that point, I had never really seen. Even though now I've seen it everywhere since then. I've seen it quite a few times, but what it basically means is, curvy or full in a positive way. So it kind of means the same thing as the other thick. It's applied a lot to refer to men's or women's bodies, thighs, butts, muscles, or it can be used to refer to a wide array of other things. So from food to buildings to eyebrows to wallets. Some examples for you are somebody posted on Twitter, posted a picture of herself at the gym and said, wish my wallet was as thick, T-H-I-C-C, as my thighs, and saying this in a positive way, like she kind of showing off her thighs, saying, wish my wallet was the same as that. In our original article that we were talking about here, there was actually a quote from Mashable, which was talking about Chipotle's new chocolate shake, where they said it was so good and thick, T-H-I-C-C. So that's just how that's being used. So
kind of in a way that describes something to be thicker than thick, right?
But in a super appealing way.
Right. That's thick with 2 C's. And that's how you would say it? I was like, okay, so you don't just say thick?
It's almost like underlining.
Yeah. What I came to find out after this was another popular term is dummy thick, which is like super thick. That's stupid thick. It's kind of the same thing.
Yeah. That's a good one because, that one definitely, you'll see that a lot. If you go looking for thick, you'll find dummy thick a lot.
Slang 101 today on Speaking Human.
So what you got for our next one, Patrick?
Next on the list is stan. And stan, S-T-A-N, is a combination of stalker and fan. I'll give you a usage scenario. As a noun, he has millions of stans who are obsessed with him. Or you could use it as a verb. I'm a stan of Keanu Reeves, so I watch all his movies. The origin of this is kind of interesting because some credit the rapper Eminem.
Yeah, that's what I thought of.
Yeah, a song that came out in 2000 that referenced a crazy fan named Stan. Some credit him as the origin of that, which, that's almost 20-year-old song.
And it's funny, I've obviously known of the Eminem song since it came out way back when. And I knew the lyrics and what the song was about. I never put together the stalker and fan combination making Stan when I heard that song, though.
No, either did I.
But it's a good one. I do. I like that term a lot.
Yeah. So what else you got?
So next up is one that I think many people might know or at least have seen. I know I've seen it a lot in articles or sports discussion and chatters, and that is GOAT. This doesn't have anything to do with farm animals like you might initially think. It's an acronym, and it stands for Greatest of All Time. You've probably seen this one quite a bit, Patrick.
This one, I think, is probably one of these terms that we're using, or slang terms that we're using, that has become so popular in mainstream that, I mean, everybody uses it.
Yeah, your dad might know this one.
Yeah, I think about ESPN uses it all the time when they reference LeBron James, right?
Yeah. So greatest of all time. Yeah, that's a fairly obvious one, but if you didn't know that one by now, you should know that one.
So my next one, woke, that's the past tense of wake, stems from some varieties of African American vernacular English, sometimes also referred to as AAVE. It's increasingly used as a byword for social awareness. So when people are talking about something that's politically charged or socially charged, they might say, I didn't know that, but now I'm woke. I was sleeping, but now I'm woke. I hear this word actually a lot lately.
Past year, that is one of the terms that you saw a lot used on social media when talking about just a lot of these movements we've seen boil up. That's one of those terms I think that if you haven't heard by now, at this point, most people have at least had some exposure to, I would think.
Yeah.
So our next one, a little more, we're going a little more obscure here. This is one I was not familiar with until pretty recently, and that is tea. Tea, spelled the same way like the stuff you drink, TEA. People will talk about tea or the real tea, or use the term spill the tea. Those are some of the formations you'll see. And basically what tea means in this context is news, gossip, or information. So tea or real tea is valuable or straight up info told like it really is. A lot of times on Twitter, you'll also see period tea, which T being just the letter. And that means someone is just telling it like it really is. They'll make a statement and put at the end of it, period T. So here's a few examples of the usage of that. So, me listening to fresh tea about my friend's bad relationship. And so this was posted with a video of a guy loving the smell of toxic fumes. So in this case, it's fresh tea about my friend's bad relationship. It's like fresh gossip. So another example is Apple Music is better than Spotify, and that's the real tea. And then another one is, these are the best Marvel movies, period T. And then it was posted with an image showing what the best Marvel movies were, which for the record, they had as Iron Man, Black Panther, Thor Ragnarok, and Ant-Man and the Wasp. Interesting collection, I thought.
I like that you chose to give our listeners their list.
I thought everybody would be like, but what are they? So I had to answer the question.
Yeah, that's an interesting one that I did not get. I had a hard time understanding the context of why people were using that. Now it makes more sense, I guess, as you describe it. For me, that's the most foreign, tea.
Yeah, it's a weird, I'm not sure the origin of that. I think it comes down to like having tea and getting gossip over tea or something like that. But I know that term is getting used a lot these days.
Yeah. So the next on the list is extra. Just how it's spelled, how it normally is spelled. Over the top, dramatic behavior. So a usage might be, Joe is being extra right now. I don't know why I always use Joe in my usage scenarios.
Basic name.
The origin on Urban Dictionary goes back to 2003. That, if a person is being dramatic, you could kind of see the stem of where that comes from, right? If dramatic is kind of someone who is over the top, don't be so extra, man.
Yeah, I like it. And it's just eliminating, an extra word there rather than saying like extra dramatic. You're just extra.
You're not being melodramatic, which also means overly dramatic.
Could be just mellow, though. Why don't people use that? Stop being so mellow.
Because then that means something completely different, I guess. There's just too many. If you even try to remember all of these words, you'd have to be using them all the time.
Yeah. There's some guy called the Slanger who just keeps track of them all. That's all he speaks in.
We all know that guy is dank, which means he's really cool.
Totally.
Anyway, so what else you got on the list?
Well, I got a pretty crazy one next. I'm dead. No, Patrick, don't worry. I'm all right. It's just the term I have next is I'm dead, which is something I've never heard before. It was on that list that Massachusetts teacher was keeping, but not something I've really heard of, and probably not what most older people would think, which is most people would probably go to a dark place, death-related. but not what it means at all. It means I'm dying laughing because that cracked me up. I'm dead. It's usually paired with like a picture or a meme or something, and people often use it with the laugh cry emoji face. They'll put like 4 of those and say I'm dead. Good example is I'm sorry, but I have never seen someone eat a hot dog with chopsticks. I'm dead. And then those emoji crying faces. Pretty basic. I'm dying laughing. I'm dead from seeing something so funny.
That's a good one. It kind of makes sense, right? I'm laughing so hard, man. That's killing me. It's so funny. Not to be confused with ghost, which is when you completely disappear after hanging out and showing interest in someone.
Ghosting is a good one. I think I'm dead is the one that probably older generations, like they see a text, on their kid's phone that's like, what does this mean? It's probably the most foreign, like, what? I don't understand this at all.
Yeah. When you originally said it, I thought maybe you were trying to tell me you were like Patrick Swayze in Ghost, like I'm dead. I was going to put a penny on the door and have you slide it up the door.
I thought we were going to go with like a Sixth Sense thing. Episode 118. Do you know you've been podcasting with a dead person this whole time? What?
Oh.
A twist.
That would be terrifying, wouldn't it? I would create that new slang term. I just got Bruced. Like Bruce Willis in Sixth Sense. With you being dead. I just got bruised. I think that's actually a great slang term that should be created from this point forward. That's how they start, right? Isn't it? I mean, literally, that's how slang terms start. It's like, man, we got to use this. So the last on the list is finna. So finna, it means going to or you're intending to. The usage might be, in this case, I'm finna make a scene. I'm gonna make a scene. I'm intending to make a scene. Finna is kind of like fixing to. If you've ever been to Texas or somewhere down south, a lot of times they'll say, we're fixing to have dinner. Same kind of concept. We're finna have dinner.
Yeah, this one blows my mind. I haven't seen it that much, and gonna, same amount of letters, pretty close. Even knowing what it is, if I saw it, I'd probably still be confused.
But, that's how slang works, though, too. You know what I mean?
It is. But it's still, if someone said this to me, I'd be like, what are you saying?
So it's safe to say that you'd be shook? Because shook, confused or in utter disbelief. You'd be shook at the premise of someone using this.
To my core. Totally accurate.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just throwing in tons of slang words that weren't even on our list today.
Well, there's so many, there's just so many. You could fill 25 episodes with it.
Yeah. I'm only going to say this last one. I probably should have started the episode by calling you Hunty, because Hunty is the equivalent of a friend, but said with attitude, you're my Hunty, as opposed to, hey, bae. Because bae maybe might be misconstrued, but if I said, you're my Hunty, you're my friend, right?
Like we go hunting together?
I guess. I don't know. We hunt. What do we hunt? I don't know. We hunt knowledge.
I've never heard that one either. I've never heard anyone say that. That might not even be real. You might have made that one up.
It's on a list. But are there any other ones that we didn't list today on the podcast that get used a lot in social that you enjoy?
Yeah, there's a few that I see a lot that I like, that I think are funny. And these might be outdated, and that's why I like them. One is adulting. Doing tasks that make you feel like an adult, or you're like in the adult world. Another one is, this one's a pretty old one, but this is a good one. Humble brag, which is a great term coined, I think, by a comedian about how people will subtly tell people how fantastic their lives are by complaining or saying something, I remember an example being like, God, isn't it the worst when you go places and everybody just hits on you? Bragging about your life, but trying to act like you're humble about it some way. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
The humble brag, I'm a big fan of. I think that's a pretty funny one. And a couple others I like are clap back, which I just think is a great word. It's just another word for a comeback. And then another one is don't at me, which I love this one. Basically makes it seem like you're going to say something controversial, even if no one really cares. You just throw don't at me. People are really going to respond because they care so much, but no one really cares what you're saying.
I love those. Those are good.
Yeah, so those are just a few that I enjoy, personally. What about you? You got any?
I was thinking about really popular ones that most people know. When someone says blessed, which means they're fortunate, or hangry, which is a combination of hungry and angry. FOMO, which means fear of missing out.
Yeah.
trolling, which everybody knows about today, nowadays on social media. Probably one of my favorites, though, is AF. And I see this a ton, but we've also seen this in actual brand advertising. We have an example of Adidas advertising where they had a campaign called Fearless AF, which means as you could find those ads on Speaking Human by searching for Adidas AF. I like that one a lot.
Yeah, I like that one a lot.
And then the last probably would be Netflix and chill, slang for hooking up.
That one might be over at this point. You know, it might have actually run its course, but I like that one. That was a good one.
Seems like years ago that came out. Yeah, it might be out and done. But so are a lot of these. They've been around for a long time, like trolling. I mean, trolls have been around forever.
Since the medieval times.
Yeah, I don't want to be savage about this. Which means petty. I always have to give the definition because I feel like this is a knowledge episode, right? I can't just say things and people be like, why is he saying savage?
But if you just said it, then people be like, it's so natural for him. He's such a millennial. Or Gen Z, or whatever Gen.
Or they'll be like, you know he shouldn't be using that because he's defining it after he says it, which is kind of the opposite of what you should be doing. Like, if you're cool, you won't define it, man.
I like to just use them incorrectly and not say anything about it.
Yeah.
This chicken taco is totally sus.
Or this chicken taco is woat. Instead of goat, it's the worst of all time. It's woat.
I thought it was like a combination of woke and goat.
Well, I wanted to make sure that people knew that we were giving them words that they can use that if you don't want to use goat, you've always got woat. It's all about choices, right?
If you're a negative person.
Yeah. Do you want to throw shade or do you want to say bye, Felicia? I don't know.
Okay.
See, we could just go on for days, right?
I feel like you're just paging through your dictionary.
Look, if you don't like it, man, just swerve, okay? Which means get out of the way, by the way.
Oh, no. That's a good one.
So on that note, everyone, let's get our final nugget of human wisdom.
Human wisdom. Today's human wisdom comes from a handful of users on Twitter. Here are some thoughts from these different users on the use of slang. First up is Sharon. Sharon says, I went to college and started using everyone's slang. Next up is Ashlyn. Ashlyn says, my parents just started using slang words that they definitely should not be. Help me. Next up is Taylor. Taylor says, I need to stop jokingly using slang terms because they slowly become part of my actual vocabulary, and then I just end up looking like the idiots I was originally making fun of. Next up is Cora. Cora says, white people using memes of and slang from black folks when you know they would literally never talk like that is the cringiest. And finally, we have Durururu, who says, once parents and older generations start using the trendy words / slang, it gets dropped by the youth like a bag full of crap. Always some great sentiments on Twitter. The basic takeaway here, language is fluid. It's constantly changing. New terms are constantly emerging while others are fading into the backdrop. While brands should be aware of and conscious of the latest slang, they should also tread very carefully when using it themselves. There's typically a lot more downside to going over the top with it than there is upside. So be careful with your slang.
Yeah, like this episode, there's a lot of downside from using and overusing the slang terms, right?
I definitely agree with that. Don't at me.
Yeah, trill.
Define it. Define it for us.
True and real. Trill.
That deserves to be used all the time.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, just in general, whether or not people think about it in a marketing capacity, just like we were talking about at the beginning of the episode, it's a language. And just like any language, you should be aware of it at the very least so that you don't make critical mistakes. Hopefully we gave you guys a lot to think about today, how not to use slang terms like us. Or maybe you'll give us a shout, or as I like to say, yeet, show excitement, and agree with us.
You do say that a lot.
So, yeet, yeet. I don't know if you say it double like that. I'm fully submerged in the culture now of slang terminology. I don't know if it's actually a culture, but I'd like to think it is. So that's it for today's episode. You can find current and past episodes of the podcast on speakinghuman.com. While you're there, click on the sign up link in the top nav or anywhere you see sign up on the website and invite Speaking Human to bring a small but still banging party to your inbox every Friday.
Do you have a favorite slang term currently making the rounds on social? Share it with us on Twitter using the hashtag #NewSocialSlang. You can find us at speaking_human on Twitter. That's at speaking_human on Twitter. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode of Speaking Human. Catch you then, humans.
Speaking Human.